Yesterday, my mother and I went to see The Lion King at the cinemas. The Lion King begins with Simba running around with his friend Nala. It begins with his birth. He is lifted up and presented to the crowd, and all of the animals are celebrating the fact that a new lion is born, and he will one day become the ruler of all the animals in the jungle. The only member of the animal kingdom who isn't celebrating is Scar. Scar is the uncle of Simba. Simba's dad is Mufasa and his mother is Sarabi. Mufasa goes to Scar and questions why he wasn't at the celebration. Scar has a grudge against his brother because Sarabi chose Mufasa over him, and he always wanted to be the leader of the animal kingdom, but he never got the opportunity. Zazu is a spoonbill who is Mufasa's advisor. Mufasa often teases Zazu by pretending to pounce on him, but then sparing his life at the last minute. This is a cruel game to play, but it's not as cruel as the way Scar plays with a mouse, grabbing it by his paw and acting as if he's going to squeeze the life out of it before he lets it go. Simba and Nala find the idea of being each other's betrothed disgusting at first. They couldn't think of anything worse in the world. But later on their tastes change. Mufasa tells Simba when they die, their bodies become the grass, and the antelopes eat the grass, and all things are connected in the great circle of life. It's true that we are all connected to each other, but the difference between us and the animals is that we have spirits and the animals don't. Mufasa shows Simba all of the kingdom from the vantage point of a cliff and tells him that he can go anywhere in the kingdom except for where the Shadowlands are. And this gets Simba intrigued, and he's even more intrigued when he speaks to Scar, and he piques his curiosity by talking to him about elephants' graveyards and muddy pools being located beyond the Pride Lands in the realm of shadows. When Nala is getting licked by her mother to clean the dirt off her, Simba comes to her and tries to get her to go away with him. But at first he has to be cleaned by his mother. He pulls himself away and says he's too old to be cleaned by his mother. And he licks himself and says, "There, I'm all done. Now can I go?" And his mother lets him go, but they have to take Zazu with them. He tells his mother he's taking Nala to the watering hole, but he lied to his mother, and he really intends to go to the Shadowlands instead. They have to shake off Zazu. In the Shadowlands, they meet a pack of hyenas. One of them is slow-witted and losing his marbles. They have a female leader, and then there's another hyena that is rather grumpy. They would have been turned into hyena snacks if Mufasa hadn't turned up and convinced the hyenas to scram. Mufasa leads Simba and Nala back home. When Nala is safely home, he takes Simba to one side to have a chat with him. He tells his son that one day they will become stars. When they look up at the sky together, he says that the great kings of the past are looking down on us from the stars. As Christians, we know that our spirits don't become stars. The stars are constantly singing glory to God. The stars aren't kings, but they do have a king, and that is Elohim, or Jesus Christ. Simba is convinced by Scar to go into the valley and practice his roar. While he's doing this, Scar is organizing the hyenas to get behind the buffaloes and bite at their heels, causing them to stampede. Simba manages to find a cleft in the rock where he's kept safe from the buffalo stampede. Mufasa isn't so blessed. He's clinging desperately to the side of the cliff, trying to escape from the buffalo stampede, when his brother Scar digs his claws into his paws and then releases them, causing him to fall down into the stampede and become stomped to death. When Simba sees Mufasa's crushed body, he lies next to it and tries to sleep. When Scar finds him, he says to Simba that he is a murderer and he must flee the Pride Lands. In Simba's absence, Scar and the hyenas take over the Pride Lands. There was always enough food to eat when Mufasa was king, because he only killed sustainable numbers of animals further down the food chain. But when Scar took over, the number of animals available for eating were quickly depleted, because the hyenas and Scar were greedy. They ate the animals faster than they could reproduce. Quickly, the land became devastated. The food pyramid was changed. Previously, the lions got fed before the hyenas. The hyenas used to get the leftovers, but when Scar took over, the lions got a small portion of leftovers and the hyenas took the lion's share. When Simba was running away from the Pride Lands, he met a meerkat named Timon and a warthog named Pumbaa. Timon and Pumbaa taught him the philosophy of Hakuna Matata, which is a Swahili word that means no worries. Pumbaa had to suffer when he was a young warthog, when he farted at the waterhole, and all the animals were disgusted with him because they failed to stand downwind or make a significant amount of distance between them and Pumbaa so that they didn't get the smell of his methane gas sprayed in their faces. We don't hear anything about Timon's background. Both of them introduce Simba to bugs, which he finds disgusting at first, but then later finds to be them to be slimy yet satisfying. Nala goes searching for Simba. She takes him back to the Pride Lands. before she takes him back, we see them falling in love with each other, licking each other and playing together and walking together. In the original movie, we saw them splashing around and swimming together, and Simba throwing back his wet mane and looking lovingly into the eyes of Nala. In this version, we still see Nala overpowering Simba by jumping on top of him. She overpowered him when they were little cubs as well. When Simba was little, he sang about how he just couldn't wait to be king. When he falls in love with Nala, we hear him and her singing, "Can you feel the love tonight?" When Scar is preparing his army to take over the Pride Lands, we hear him singing the song, "Be Prepared." In the original movie, he sang the line, "I know it sounds sordid, but you'll be rewarded when at last I'm given my dues." This line doesn't appear in the new movie. When Timon and Pumbaa first meet Simba, in the original movie, Pumbaa talks about putting his past in his behind, and Timon corrects him and changes it to putting your past behind you. I was sad that this joke wasn't included in the current movie. I was happy that there were no scenes of transvestitism in the new movie. In the original movie, in order to trick the hyenas, Pumbaa dresses in drag and does the hula, and so does Timon with a grass skirt and a coconut bra. This time around, Timon and Pumbaa are channeling the spirit of Luminia from Beauty and the Beast. Timon is bugging on a fake French accent and saying, "Be our guest," and pretending to prepare a sumptuous porcine meal for the hyenas to consume. Thankfully, they don't succeed in chewing Timon and Pumbaa. Simba and Nala have to get past the hyenas in order to reclaim the Pride Lands. Scar constantly pressures Sarabi to take him as her husband, but she refuses. That's why she and the other lions are forced to wait for the hyenas to finish before the lions can eat their leftovers. Rafiki isn't as funny in this movie as he was in the first one. He has a different method of making his art. In the original movie, he makes a lion's face by cracking a mango or some kind of fruit, dipping his stick in the fruit and drawing with the fruit juice on a rock. In this current movie, he uses powder instead. His portrayal of the young lion cub and the older lion Mufasa, and display of the transition between Simba as a youth and Simba as an adult by painting a mane around his face are continued in this movie. But his humorous refrain of "Asante sana, squash banana, wee wee," that isn't used in the current movie, which I thought was a pity. I'm pretty sure the original movie had a joke about Zazu's cousin believing himself to be a woodpecker and knocking his head against a tree and knocking himself unconscious because spoonbills aren't meant to peck holes in wood. God designed them for other purposes. But in this version, we don't get Zazu singing his humorous song of "I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts, diddly-dee, there they are, all standing in a row, big ones, small ones, some as big as your head." The conversation which Simba has with Timon and Pumbaa about his ancestors being in the stars is retained from the original movie. Zazu is a completely different colour in the original movie. He used to be blue and now he's a pale white. I find it humorous that Sean Carter or Jay-Z wrote a song called Death of Auto-Tune, and his wife Beyonce Knowles sang a song that obviously uses auto-tune in this latest version of The Lion King. I was pleased to see her singing about the great I Am in her song Spirit. I'm not saying that she's a Christian just because she sings about the great I Am, but it is good to see phrases that are connected to Christianity being used by mainstream movies. It's possible to connect the truths of Christianity present in this movie, to bring them out and to make them apparent to those to whom they are hidden in the dark. Just like Mufasa looked after his son Simba and died to save him, Jesus died to save us. although Simba could take Mufasa's place, we could never take Jesus' place, because we could never be perfect and sinless and worthy to die for the sins of mankind, for the redemption of every single nation. When we become believers, we become kings and priests, or princes and princesses, or priestesses. We become princes like Simba was a prince. The devil is just like Scar. Just like the devil tried to tempt Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden by offering them fruit for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, Scar tried and succeeded in tempting Simba to go to the Shadowlands. The Shadowlands had nothing to offer Simba, just like sin has nothing to offer us, even though it seems exciting and appealing. Once we partake of it, once we get involved in it, we find that it just leaves us feeling hollow. It leaves us feeling empty inside. It fails to satisfy us. Simba thought that the Shadowlands were going to be exciting and fulfilling, but they turned out to be the total opposite. That's the same way it is for us with sin. Obviously, he ended up marrying Nala, and they had a little lion cub of their own. And you can hear about the adventures of that lion cub in the sequel, The Lion King 2, Return to Pride Rock, which I've never seen, so I can't tell you what happens in it. I'm not sure exactly how much of the modern Lion King movie involves special effects and how much of it uses actual locations in Africa. That would be interesting to find out. I do think they made a poor casting decision choosing somebody else apart from Jeremy Irons to play Scar, because the guy they picked doesn't do it in quite as menacing a way. I believe they chose well with Nala, but not with Simba, because he can't hit the high notes like Jonathan Taylor Thomas could. I'm not sure if they picked an older kid. But the guy they picked didn't have the same ability that Jonathan Taylor Thomas did. It was an enjoyable movie, but it wasn't as enjoyable as the original movie. I'm still glad I went to see it. I remember being on an outreach team and my friends on the outreach team calling warthogs Pumbas in Zambia because they didn't know what to call warthogs when we saw them near the Zambezi River in the south of Zambia in Livingstone. It's a tragedy that Europeans died there trying to cultivate the land. They didn't have a clue what to do. I praise God that they managed to get Livingstone out alive. It's a shame that his wife chose to live in the UK while he lived in Zambia. I can't remember if the original Lion King movie included a scene where a tuft of Simba's mane travelled all the way from where he was hiding to the Pride Lands, whether it was carried by a dung beetle and rejected as nesting material by a bird, and whether Rafiki ended up with it. I thought that was an ingenious way to explain how Rafiki gained knowledge of Simba transitioning from a cub into a fully grown lion. I did enjoy the African music in this movie. I think the music was stronger as far as the African tunes went in this movie than it was in the original movie. Pharrell Williams did an excellent job of putting the soundtrack together. If it wasn't for Elton John and Tim Rice writing the original lyrics, he wouldn't have had anything to work with. It's hard to transition between cultures and make a realistic portrayal of African life when you've never been an African. I wouldn't know how to do it. I believe Walt Disney Pictures did an admirable job. I would recommend this movie to anybody, but I would recommend the original more. Go and see it and tell me what you think. Peace out.